Well, I got great news for all Americans, and it's all because of President Biden and this renewed talk of bringing manufacturing right back to the good old US of A. Now, I must say that this is something that is sorely needed right here in the United States, and I can only see good things coming of it. Now, while that's good for the American people, Republicans look to be dedicated in finding the true origin of the pandemic, and most arrows are pointing toward Dr. Anthony Fauci and the funding of gain-of-function research. Kind of feels like we battled through the pandemic and won in some respects, but do you guys think that it's best to hold the people who have had a hand in all of this accountable? Just drop a quick yes or no down below to that. Now, when you think about it, the health crisis, it crushed small businesses. It crushed major, large Fortune 500, S&P 500 businesses. And it had more Americans applying for SNAP and EBT benefits, seeking out second jobs. We've seen layoffs in different markets and has essentially brought the housing market and the stock market to its knees. Now, before I continue, please take a second, smash the like button. That definitely helps us get through the tricky YouTube algorithm. And if you're in need of your daily dose of the truth when it comes to Washington, D.C., the state of our economy, global happenings, Social Security, SSI, and SSDI, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected. Get your free home warranty quote. The link is in the description down below this video. More than 7,000 nurses from two of New York's largest hospitals just walked off the job recently because they complained of low pay and excessive work. Now, according to their union, quote, "Nurses don't want to strike. Bosses have pushed us to strike by refusing to seriously consider our proposals to address the desperate crisis of unsafe staffing that harms our patients," end quote. Wow. Who would have thought that working employees to work hard when you pay them so little will make them walk off the job? Patients say that it's time that nurses are treated fairly, especially since they've saved countless lives on the job. Now, speaking of which, the DOJ, or the Department of Justice, is doing theirs as they just seized almost $500 million worth of Robinhood shares by disgraced former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, if you guys remember SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, he said that he needs this money to help pay for his legal fees. Not sure how that's going to work out for him now, but I think he's going to have some money to pay for it one way or the other. Now, I'm sure that he's disappointed with that decision. Same with former Vice President Mike Pence, as he's shown disappointment with the FBI's alleged double standards when it comes to former President Trump and President Biden. Now, as you guys already know, this is in relation to President Biden having left behind classified documents in a former office of his when he was vice president. Now, Pence voiced his frustration and said that the massive overreach by the FBI was the original sin. He also said, quote, "Having now created that standard and now abandoned that standard when the current president of the United States is found to have classified documents in his possession after leaving office, I have no words right now. But the willingness of the national media to just turn away and turn a deaf ear to the disclosures that when Vice President Biden left office, he left with classified documents as well. It just shows you. It's like I said before, if they don't have double standards, then have no standards at all," end quote. Some Republican lawmakers are already asking when the president will have his home raided by the FBI, with some saying that there was no way that these documents were declassified, as the vice president isn't able to do that. Only the president has the power to declassify documents.
The Department of Justice is looking into classified documents found at an office once used by President Biden. About 10 documents dating to his time as vice president were discovered in November at the Penn Biden Center in D.C. The discovery came 3 months after the FBI searched former President Trump's Florida home, where 300 such documents were ultimately found, some of them of the highest possible classifications.
3 sources tell CBS News the classified documents were discovered in this building about a mile from the White House at the offices of the Penn Biden Center, a foreign policy research institute set up after President Biden left the vice presidency. The FBI is also involved in the preliminary inquiry, which a source says is nearing its conclusion.
So what's also troubling is that Attorney General Merrick Garland and the DOJ, they may have known about these documents back in November 2022, but they chose to stay silent throughout the midterm elections, and only now in 2023 are these documents actually being revealed. Now, if this broke out before the midterms, do you guys think that it would have affected the votes? I mean, think about it. President Biden has already responded to the claims, and he said that he's surprised that the documents were found, but was willing to cooperate fully regarding the matter. Now, on that note, do you guys think that Dr. Anthony Fauci will cooperate regarding the origin of C-19 and its funding? House Republicans just commissioned a special investigative panel that focused on just that. Representative James Comer, who is expected to chair the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, he said, quote, There's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And I believe every American, regardless of their political ideology, would like to know the truth. End quote. Can't argue with them there. They've also said that they will demand Dr. Anthony Fauci and the NIH to retain any records involving the origins of the virus, Chinese government's efforts to cover it up, and everything that may affect national security risks. Do you guys remember that epic back and forth between Senator Rand Paul and Fauci in the past? Do you think we're going to see a little bit more of that? He's innocent until proven guilty. But say they find evidence that clearly links him to the funding of gain-of-function research. Will he then be held accountable by all world leaders? Or will this then be forgotten? You know what's hard to forget? The Twitter files. We're still getting more information to this day, and now we're seeing attorney generals from both Louisiana and Missouri suing the federal government for colluding with big tech social platforms to violate our right of free speech. Now, there's a handful of stuff that they want to talk about, namely the White House asking Twitter to censor Robert Kennedy Jr. and his criticism of the C-19 narrative, the shutting down of conservative news anchors like Tucker Carlson, demanding social platforms to remove bad information on vaccines and slow down anti-vax posts. It was a time where questioning anything the government was doing was considered becoming a conspiracy theorist. With more data released that shows that some of these theories turned out to be true, I wonder how they're going to respond to all this. Cannot be good news for all those in Washington, D.C. But contrary to that, I do have some good news to tell you guys. President Biden, together with Mexican President Obrador and Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, have renewed talks about bringing semiconductor manufacturing back home. And we've also agreed to work together on challenges like drug trafficking and immigration. The discussion on chips, semiconductor chips, it's exciting since this will lead to more work here in the United States, tied with less dependence on Taiwan and China for these parts. Our markets have been closely tied to that part of the globe since we rely on these parts. It could be for cars, phones, computers, basically anything that needs a semiconductor chip. Bringing semiconductor chip manufacturing back home to the United States, it's not only going to create new jobs, more jobs, and new opportunities, but it's also going to add to our national security. Now, if they could only do the same thing with the manufacturing of medicine, while we have a glimpse of good news, I understand that our lives will not be affected by these changes instantly. There are more people borrowing on their Visa, MasterCard, American Express credit cards with even more fear of layoffs. The problem can be attributed to cash flow, maybe a lack of it, no passive income, and even when you say you're making the same amount of money, we're not afforded the same amount of spending opportunities as others due to inflation's attack on our bank accounts. So I ask you, do you want change? Do you want to understand the best way to handle your budget? Are you trying to develop multiple streams of income through side hustles or a small business? Maybe a home-based business or an online business? Well, if you said yes to any of that, feel free to join us over in the Patreon community. There's a link in the description down below. It's not easy, but the path to financial freedom under these times, it's not impossible. But before I go, please don't forget to drop a thumbs up for the video. Also subscribe for your daily dose of the truth. Appreciate you guys watching. You guys are all awesome. I'll see you on the next one.